The first known use of a military submarine was during the American Revolutionary War. This one-person submersible was called the Turtle, made of oak and a far cry from the underwater vehicles we know today. Although the Turtle was wholly unsuccessful, it did not stop the development of submarines for warfare. By World War I, Germany had advanced submarine technology and military strategy. The German U-boats were so effective that the Allies had to modernize their submarines to compete. By the start of World War II, technological advances made submarine warfare a pivotal part of the action. Being stationed on a submarine was often called the silent service because of the degree of stealth involved and because it was hard for civilians to receive news of the men aboard the submarines. To learn more about this often overlooked aspect of the Second World War, stay with us as we explore how submarine warfare played an important role in World War II. Submarines in World War II were generally faster and more versatile than ever. They had been equipped with better weaponry and more sophisticated detection technology and could pursue a target rather than just lying in wait. All the major players in World War II had their own submarine fleets, and each had a vital role in the war. France. After World War I, the Allies, including the French, had a chance to study the German submarines and update their designs. The French had amassed 77 up-to-date submarines by the start of World War II. They preferred the coastal type rather than the larger sea-going submarines. When the Germans occupied France, the Axis powers captured some French subs. Others joined the Allies, which led to much confusion, with some submarines loyal to the Allies being mistaken for enemy vessels. One of the submarines that successfully served the Allies was the Rubis. The Rubis served with the British Home Fleet and was used to lay mines off the Norwegian coast. She became the most successful vessel in her class and completed 22 successful mine-laying missions. She was also fitted with torpedoes and sank 15 vessels, including 2 warships. Italy. Italy's disastrous role in World War II is well documented, but it is less well known that they had one of the largest submarine fleets in the world when the war first broke out. During the conflict, 88 of the 116 submarines that made up the Italian fleet were lost. The Italian submarines mainly saw action in the Mediterranean, although 32 operated in the Atlantic alongside the German U-boats. These 32 subs alone sank 109 Allied ships. As well as submarines, Italy also employed manned torpedoes, which were used to successfully destroy Allied ships. One such incident happened in September 1941. 3 torpedoes were launched from a submarine's deck in Gibraltar Bay, each manned by 2 Italian sailors in rubber suits and fitted with breathing gear. One of the men later wrote about his experience. "You see your target ship outlined against the sky. You take a compass bearing, flood the diving tank, and the water closes over your head. It is cold and dark and silent." Both the men aboard the torpedoes had a vital role. The man at the front was the pilot and maneuvered the vessel through the harbor and underneath the target ship. He then held the submersible in place as the passenger attached a clamp with a line to the target ship. The line attached to the warhead detached from the torpedo, and the men returned to the waiting submarine. 2 hours after the warheads were attached, they exploded and sunk the British ships the Dembydale, the Durham, and the Fiona Shell. The men aboard the torpedoes wearing the rubber suits were the original frogmen, and they started the transition from the traditional heavy underwater diving equipment to the modern diving suits we know today. Russia. Despite being largely landlocked, Russia had a substantial navy. Although it didn't have as many surface vessels as other Allied countries, it probably had the largest submarine fleet, with 218 submarines that operated in the Baltic, the Arctic, the Black Seas, and the Pacific Ocean. Since the Soviets had started World War II as allies of the Germans provided the design of the Russian submarines, and these subs would go on to be a thorn in the side of the German naval forces. The most prominent Russian sub was the S-class, a medium-class vessel that was quick and effective. However, they were also uncomfortable and unsafe. But due to highly skilled crews, these submarines were able to take down some of Germany's most prized ships, including the luxurious transport ship the Wilhelm Gustloff. Unfortunately, in this instance, the Wilhelm Gustloff was carrying refugees from East Prussia. As it did not carry the appropriate markings for a medical vessel and looked every bit like a warship, the Soviets unwittingly took the lives of between 6,000 and 9,000 people, mainly women and children. America. American submarines were vital to the war effort, not just as attack vessels but also as humanitarian aid, including rescuing downed pilots. The American subs mostly saw action in the Pacific. They were instrumental in disrupting the Japanese Navy's machinations and cutting off supply lines by downing Japanese merchant ships. It is estimated that the U.S. submarines destroyed around 1,314 Axis-power warships and 5.3 million tons of shipping. But that came at a price, and the U.S. Naval Submarine Service had the highest casualty percentage of the American forces during World War II, at roughly 20%. A total of 3,506 men were killed in service on U.S. submarines. One of the most successful U.S. submarines was the USS Barb, which holds the record for sinking the greatest tonnage by Japanese records. Commissioned in 1942, she was one of only 6 U.S. submarines that operated in the Eastern Atlantic. On her first war patrol, she aided the Allied invasion of North Africa. But by 1943, she had been repositioned in the Pacific. On her 7th war patrol, she sank the Fukusei Maru and had a successful patrol in the Sea of Okhotsk, where she sank 5 major Japanese cargo ships. Barb went on to have many successful missions, including humanitarian aid. Perhaps her most impressive maneuver was at the command of Eugene Lucky Flucky, who managed to take out 2 ships, the tanker Azusa Maru and the escort carrier Unyo, with 1 artillery discharge. Despite their success, the U.S. submarines were marred by torpedo problems. The Mark 14 torpedoes, the main one used by the U.S. during World War II, had various issues. They would often miss their targets, detonate prematurely, or not detonate at all. Some of these issues were linked to the Mark 6 exploder, which was not extensively tested and was affected by the Earth's magnetic field difference between the test site and the area in which they were deployed. Another issue with the Mark 14 was that it sometimes circled instead of shooting straight, and there is at least one recorded case in which the torpedo sank the sub that fired it. It wasn't until 1944, when an electrical one replaced the magnetic switch, that the Mark 14 became a reliable weapon in the field. Japan. The Japanese probably had the most diverse range of submersibles in World War II. They employed manned torpedoes in a wide range of submarines, including midgets, medium-range subs, and supply subs. They also had long-range fleet submarines capable of carrying aircraft, subs that could achieve high speeds when submerged, and submarines that could carry multiple bombers. They had the largest submarines in the world at their command, including the only subs in history capable of carrying 3 floatplane bombers. However, their submarine fleet achieved relatively little in the war. Historians believe the main reason is that the Japanese used their subs against warships. The Allied warships were fast and well defended, and given the improvements in intelligence and technology, the Japanese submarines could never achieve frequent success. Many now believe that if the Japanese submarines had targeted merchant ships instead, they could have inflicted infinitely more damage on the Allies. Germany. While Adolf Hitler was preparing Germany for war, he knew he needed all the available military advancements. As the Unterseeboots, or U-boats, had proved a valuable asset to the German forces in World War I, he began constructing new U-boats and developing new tactics. Hitler would have been aware that Allied countries had used German U-boat technology to improve their submarine capabilities, and that German designs would need to be improved. As the Treaty of Versailles forbade Germany from possessing U-boats, he knew that this was an area in which he needed to gain the upper hand. Germany prepared for unrestricted submarine warfare after forcefully negotiating the right to build U-boats. For the first phase of the war, the German U-boats operated alone, targeting merchant ships. However, soon Allied merchant ships began sailing in convoys, often with escort groups, including aircraft that were an effective anti-U-boat weapon. In response, the Germans used bases in Norway and France to send U-boats further into the Atlantic and began attacking in groups. They would locate a target, use radio to summon other U-boats, and attack on the surface under cover of night. By March 1943, the Germans had nearly succeeded in cutting off British supply lines. However, the Allies developed radar and upgraded their air support to allow for long-range escorts, forcing the Germans to temporarily withdraw their submarines from the Atlantic. They went on to achieve some success in more remote waters, such as the Indian Ocean. But the Allies' strategies of striking U-boat supply lines and putting all ships into convoys proved to overpower the might of the German U-boats. Of the 1,162 U-boats built during World War II, 785 were destroyed, with the remainder either scuttled or surrendered at the war's end. Britain. At the beginning of World War II, Britain only had 57 submarines at its command. They were based around China, Malta, and British waters. As war broke out, this small fleet was wholly unprepared to deal with the upcoming onslaught of underwater warfare. At first, international law stating the submarine commanders had to respect the neutrality of the Scandinavian countries meant that many ships carrying German troops had to be allowed to pass. The British submarines were largely misused these first few years, conducting predominantly fruitless patrols. But on April 4, 1940, a change in tactics saw more success. The submarines were instructed to attack transport ships instead of warships. On April 7th, convinced that a German invasion of Norway was looming, 6 more submarines joined the 13 on patrol. Then, a Polish submarine sunk the transporter Rio de Janeiro and discovered it was full of troops, alerting the Allied powers to the upcoming invasion. Despite all the submarine operations during World War II, there was only one underwater fight. In fact, this was the only underwater fight between submarines in history. The skirmish occurred in 1945 when a German U-boat, U-864, departed from Bergen on a secret mission. The vessel was carrying German technology and resources and was destined for Japan. Unbeknownst to the Germans, the British had cracked the Enigma code, used by U-boats to communicate orders, and the mission was not as secret as the Nazis thought. The British laid a trap, instructing the submarine HMS Venturer to hunt down and destroy U-864. While the Venturer was small, had a shorter range, and carried less than half of the torpedoes than the U-864, it was almost 50% faster and could travel at 10 miles an hour underwater. At first, the U-864 managed to evade its pursuers, but when its diesel engine began noisily misfiring, its captain, Ralf-Reimar Wolfram, decided to return to Bergen for repairs. Little did he know he was leading his submarine back into the sights of the British. The British detected the U-boat and began tailing it, waiting for it to surface to attack. However, the Germans could stay submerged for longer periods and soon began to zigzag side to side, probably due to detecting the British. The British realized they would have to engage the Germans while submerged. The British captain, James Launders, fired all 4 torpedoes before diving to avoid a counterattack. The U-864 crash-dove and swerved evasively. However, Launders had fired the last pair of torpedoes at a lower depth than the others. The U-864 was split in 2, and its cargo never reached Japan. In February 2017, the Norwegian government was forced to entomb the wrecked submarine in sand and rocks after discovering that flasks of liquid mercury on board had been slowly leaking into the surrounding ocean. If you have any submarine stories from World War II, we would love to hear about them in the comments below. We hope you found this video captivating. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about World War II, check out our book, World War II, A Captivating Guide from Beginning to End. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.